While all the kingdoms in Westeros have been around for thousands of years, the Crownlands only became a thing after Aegon's conquest 300 years before the start of the story. A lot of this area was disputed between the Riverlands and the Stormlands, but the majority of this area were under the Storm Kings. At one point, House Darkland of Duskendale ruled as kings at the mouth of the Blackwater, but would also be taken over by the Storm Kings. But this entire region would be flipped upside down when the Targaryens came around. When a Dragon Lord's daughter had a vision of their home, Valyria, being destroyed, the entire Targaryen family relocated to an outpost called Dragonstone in Westeros. She happened to be right, and 12 years later the Doom of Valyria occurred, making the Targaryens the last Dragonlord family left alive. This island was already conquered by Valyria 200 years prior, and they even built a castle, also called Dragonstone, using their fire magic. The island was created by a volcano that is still active in the current story. This explains the Valyrian attraction to this dark and sad place and all the dragonglass found here. Aside from the castle and the volcano, there are some small villages around here. Over the years, the bastard children of Targaryens on the island would be referred to as dragon seeds, with some able to actually control dragons. The Targaryens may be the only Dragon Lord family, but other Valyrians were also here in Westeros. Also in Blackwater Bay, not too far from Dragonstone, is Driftmark. House Velaryon settled here before the Targaryens, and they picked out the largest island in Blackwater Bay. This family is known for its naval power on the seas. They've always been very close with the Targaryens, who they were sworn to, and have had some marriages between the families. Their castle was also called Driftmark, but a new one called High Tide would be built later. One Velaryon, called the Sea Snake, went on a bunch of voyages on his ship and returned a very rich man, probably the richest man in Westeros in his time. He didn't like how crowded and damp the old castle was, so he just had a new one built because he could. The other house with Valyrian descent around here, who are also pretty powerful on their ships, is House Celtigar on Claw Isle. There isn't a lot written about this family and island, aside from their castle supposedly having some rare and cool treasure. The island is right off the coast of Crackclaw Point. The Celtigars claim they rule over the people of Crackclaw Point, however the people here don't agree with that. They aren't very successful when they try to collect taxes here. There's a lot of houses on this peninsula. House Crab, House Brune, House Boggs, House Hardy, and House Pine. None of these families and their homes are very interesting, however, and many of their sigils haven't even been described. The other peninsula south of here in the Crownlands is Massey's Hook. There's a couple houses here, but again there isn't much to say about them. At the tip of the peninsula is Sharp Point, the castle of House Bar Emmon. The easternmost point is Stone Dance, the home of House Massey. The waters that are between here and the islands is called the Gullet. Out west is Rosby. House Rosby and their castle with the same name, along with the village here, was once under the Riverlands. With all the houses in this region covered, let me get into the good stuff. After a little over 100 years of the Targaryens just chilling at Dragonstone with their dragons, Aegon will get ambitious and want more for himself and his family. After a disagreement with the Storm King, Aegon decided to conquer all of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros and unite the continent for the first time. With his 2 sister wives and their dragons, they landed with a small army at the mouth of the Blackwater, where 3 large hills stood. The largest hill would be named Aegon's High Hill. Visenya's Hill and the Hill of Rhaenys would be named after his sister wives. The base during their conquest was built atop of Aegon's High Hill. It was called Aegon Fort. Atop of 2 other hills, Seps would later be built. House Stockworth and Rosby were the first to surrender after realizing they stood no chance against 3 dragons. While Aegon was off fighting in the Riverlands, he sent his supposed half-brother, Orys Baratheon, to deal with the Storm King. Orys Baratheon killed the last Storm King in single combat, making their house go extinct. Orys was awarded with the Stormlands, but only after a large part of it was used to create a kingdom, the Crownlands. In just a couple years, each kingdom, except for Dorne, was under the Targaryens. It wouldn't make much sense to rule over the entire continent, isolated on the island Dragonstone, and Aegon Fort was just a base during the war. So Aegon decided to tear it down and build a new castle on his hill. What started as just a region for fishermen would become the capital of the 7 kingdoms, with the largest population. While the Red Keep was being built, Aegon returned to live on Dragonstone. An entire city was growing around this location. It would be appropriately named King's Landing. Aegon would not be alive long enough to see the completion of the Red Keep, however. His second son, Maegor the Cruel, oversaw the completion of it. Maegor wanted a bunch of secret passages within the castle in case of an attack. Without knowing these tunnels very well, it could get dangerous because of all the traps laid out. When the castle was complete, Maegor had all the builders killed so the secrets of the castle wouldn't get out. In the current story, the former spy master Varys is one of the few characters who know these passages well enough to make use of them.
The fools tried to kill his son. What's worse, they botched it. The wolf and the lion will bit each other's throats. We will be at war soon, my friend.
What good is war now? We're not ready. If one hand can die, why not a second?
This hand is not the other.
Also within the Red Keep are the dungeons. It has 4 levels for the different types of prisoners held. The highest level houses your average criminals within your average type of cells you see everywhere. The second level is reserved for highborn prisoners. The cells here are more comfortable and they are kept alone, instead of being locked away with a group of dangerous prisoners. The worst of the worst are kept in the third level called the Black Cells. Like the name suggests, there is no light here. The fourth and last level is where prisoners are tortured for information or for whatever reason the king orders. Maegor's cruelty continued throughout his reign as king. The Faith of the Seven opposed his rule, and in return he had the sept that was on the hill of Rhaenys burned down atop his dragon. He had a dome built to replace it, where it would house all the family's dragons. The place was called the Dragon Pit. It was difficult for Maegor to find builders to construct the Dragon Pit after what he did to the people who built the Red Keep. He had to get prisoners to do all the manual labor. This structure didn't last very long, however, since it would be left in ruins after the Targaryens had their civil war within their family. Many years later, King Baelor Targaryen, nicknamed the Blessed, had a vision of a great sept. He ordered its construction atop Visenya's hill, and it wouldn't be completed until after his death. It was named the Great Sept of Baelor after him. This sept would become the Faith's headquarters. We see this place blow up from wildfire in the Season 6 finale of Game of Thrones. At the bottom of Visenya's Hill in King's Landing is the Guildhall of the Alchemists. This is where an organization of pyromancers do all their magic. They are nowhere near as powerful as they once were. Now, all they do is produce the substance wildfire.
If I could tell you how many crazy old men I've seen pushing carts around army camps, making grand claims about jars full of pig shit.
My friend remains unconvinced.
You would not dare insult my order whilst Aerys Targaryen lived.
Well, he's not living anymore.
When the Mad King planned to destroy King's Landing in case the city fell to Robert's rebellion, he had the guild prepare a large amount of wildfire. Jaime Lannister prevented the Mad King from blowing the city up by killing him in the Great Hall. The Great Hall is the king's throne room in the Red Keep, where the Iron Throne sits. This throne was made from the swords of men who surrendered to Aegon the Conqueror, and welded together by his dragon. Something that attributed to King Aerys II's madness was his time in Duskendale. Before King's Landing grew to be the largest port city in Westeros, Duskendale was a powerful port town. Without all the trade, House Darkland of Duskendale's wallet got hit hard by all the missing wealth. 20 years before the start of the story, a Darkland lord refused to pay his taxes to the throne and invited the Mad King to negotiate a new deal. He agreed and traveled there with a small group, only to be captured by the Darklands and held captive. For half a year, he was a prisoner in Duskendale. The Darkland lord announced he would have the Mad King killed if there was any sign of an attack. When Tywin Lannister was preparing to storm the town, Sir Barristan Selmy went in alone and rescued the king. As punishment, the Mad King had the entire family executed, but not before having the Lord's wife tortured because it's believed this was all her idea. With the Darklands extinct, House Riker was made Lords of Duskendale. After Robert's rebellion, Stannis Baratheon was given Dragonstone to rule over. Robert made the Red Keep his new home and left their family's seat of Storm's End in the Stormlands to his youngest brother Renly. Stannis saw this as an insult. Dragonstone wasn't the greatest location, while Renly became the lord of an entire kingdom even though he was just a child. So Renly got all the riches, and Stannis got a tiny island. But Robert didn't mean to insult Stannis. He didn't like him very much, but while a Targaryen king ruled in King's Landing, the heir would stay at Dragonstone and live there as its prince. Robert was just continuing this tradition. One area of King's Landing I haven't talked about yet is Flea Bottom. It's an area where the poorest small folk in the city all live. This place is known for its horrible smell and a certain dish they feed the poor. It's called a bowl of brown, and its description is pretty disgusting. The large tubs where it's made continuously cook it for years, while people believe it to have rat meat and dead bodies. There's a few fan-favorite characters that come from these alleys. Sir Davos Seaworth, Gendry, and Sir Duncan the Tall are all from here. And the last location is the Kingswood. This forest in the southern Crownlands is also in the Stormlands. I talk about this place in my Stormlands map video and show that this is where Robert Baratheon gets mortally wounded by a boar. This forest is a private hunting area for the king, but was once a hideout for a group of outlaws.
So come on, we're telling war stories. Who was your first kill, not counting old men?
One of the outlaws in the Brotherhood.
I was there that day. You were only a squire, 16 years old.
You killed Simon Toyne with the counter riposte. Best move I ever saw.
They were called the Kingswood Brotherhood. They became a huge problem when they started attacking and kidnapping highborns in this region. They were difficult to deal with because the small folk were on their side. A young Jaime Lannister, along with Kingsguard members Barristan and Arthur Dayne, took care of the outlaws. So aside from some locations without an exact location, that's the Crownlands map. This leaves the Riverlands and the Vale as the only kingdoms I haven't made one of these videos for, but they're coming. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you guys later. This one.